Our guest today is David Wallace. He's currently an Indians player development special assistant, but he's here to talk to us about his playing days and his managing days with the Lake County Captains. In 2003, he was a catcher on probably the most successful team in Captains history. And then in 2012, he was the manager of another of the most successful teams in Captains history. We'll get into that in a little bit. David, how are you doing?
Doing when you reached out and we to see about joining you on this and talk about the 03 and the 2012 team, I was excited because we got some time in our hands right now, and I'm always excited to talk about those teams.
Yeah, so again, two of the more successful teams in Captains history for two very different reasons, and we'll start with the 03 team, the winningest team in team history, 97 wins. That's the equivalent of a 112-win major league season. You, again, were the starting catcher on that team. What was the vibe like to be on a team that seemed to win almost every day?
Well, it started with, that being the first year of the Captains franchise. I mean, just an electric atmosphere, brand new ballpark, just a great environment to come into. I don't know if, it was John Farrell or Ross Atkins at that point. Like, I think when they were constructing the team, they made sure that we were going to have a rather successful, at least first half. Not to say that I should have been at a higher level, but I think there are a couple guys you could have picked out, maybe Jason Cooper being one of them, that we put in Lake County to make sure we got that off to a good start. So that team was pretty loaded, and as our record showed, one thing of me is that pitching staff, and you go back and you look at those numbers of that pitching staff, and it's incredible.
Did you have a favorite guy to catch that year?
Fausto Carmona, Roberto Hernandez, whichever one. I always go with Fausto. That's how I know him. But he was just absolutely electric that year. Just powered, mid-90s sinker and a great changeup to come off it with a nice little slide, and just absolutely dominated.
What was he like to work with? Was he a take charge guy? Did he want to call his own game, or were you pretty well dictating what he threw?
No, him and I worked really well together. He was more the type of pitcher that just wanted to do what you asked. So you tell him what to do, and he was going to go out and do it. And, I think that's one thing as you look at players, some guys feed off. Some guys do well with that type of mentality, and they're just out executing, performing. And some guys like to think through it a little bit more. I would have been interested. I didn't get a chance. I was around Fausto a little bit, as he went on and had a decent little major league career. If he remained that way, or as he developed and learned more of the game, learned himself how to attack hitters, if he took more of that upon himself. But at that time, he was, probably 19, maybe 20 years old. And he was just, whether he knew what he was doing or not, he knew it was going well, and he was going to continue to do that. And, with Tony Arnold, pitching coach there, I thought that was a great mix, a great combination for him, and really helped him.
One of the things I love about Class A baseball is if you have a guy who's particularly dominant, especially on the mound, you get a lot of silly looking at bats when you get to the bottom of an order. Is there anything that sticks out to you about whether it's Fausto or somebody else who made somebody look really foolish because he had such a good staff?
Yeah, one of the incidents that stands out to me was with Fausto particularly, is he gave up a home run. I believe we were playing like Lexington or something, but he gave up a home run, which was not something he was accustomed to. And the guy that hit it wasn't unprofessional about it, didn't pimp it, didn't watch it too much, but Fausto didn't. He had not learned how to deal with that failure yet. So the next pitch at the next batter was about right here and just knocks the guy, back off the plate. And I think he even went down to a knee. And I'm just like, whoa, is there something going on here that I don't know about? Because you get 96 right up in here. And he knew where he was throwing the ball. And that was one of the things that separated him at that level. A lot of times you get guys that can, got good stuff or good velocity, but don't really know where it's going. He knew where it was going. So that was on purpose. But, I think back to Todd Pennington, and I still don't know if I've seen a changeup, or certainly haven't caught a changeup that he had. And everyone in the world knew it was coming and still couldn't hit it. So I'm sure there were some just silly looking at bats. And I say that, in all humility, because if I was facing him, I certainly would have had my share of comical attempts at hitting it.
You mentioned before the electric atmosphere in the crowd as well. The captains drew over 6,000 per game was the average that year.
Wow.
What was it like for you as a player to step out almost every day and have that sort of crowd at a minor league park?
It's incredible. I think a lot of times it doesn't get the credit it deserves as far as the energy from the fans and from the ballpark, from, and not only from the fans, but the front office and the whole, as a team, you're there early and you realize that a lot of, if not all of the front office is already there and has already been there. And the preparations, the field crew that has been working on the field all day, getting it ready for practice, and then obviously the game. All of that coming together for a 7:05, first pitch was just first class and done really well. And of course, for a lot of the players being their first full season, that's something that's a little bit different and new and exciting. And then, everything from, they had the banner out there in left field, Cooperstown, where Jason Cooper played out there. It was just a neat time to be there, and I love going back and visiting.
Let's talk leadership on that team. So you and third baseman Sean Larkin went on to manage the captains. You're still a part of the Indians player development system, as we noted. Lark's the assistant field coordinator for the Dodgers, and their head field coordinator was one of your fellow catchers on that 03 team, Clayton McCullough, who was rumored to be up for the Giants managerial job this year as well. So one, am I missing anyone? And two, do you have any idea, or did you have any idea when you were on that team that you had so many future coaches in the clubhouse?
I didn't know because, at that point, we all think we're going to play in the big leagues for, 20 years. And that's what we're thinking. I thought we all were. I thought Sean was. I thought Clayton was. I thought I was. You got Ben Francisco on that team who did play in the big leagues. I believe he's with Philadelphia right now. Jason Cooper is a scout in the Cubs organization and one of their top guys. They really rely on him for, a lot of big assignments, going to watch guys that they're going to possibly trade for or sign as free agents. So, looking back and knowing those guys and the detail and the focus that they had, it's not surprising that they're still in the game and that they're highly sought after, coaches and scouts in the game. And I think, we're going to see a lot more from those guys.
You still keep in touch with those guys?
I do. Yeah, it's fun. With Sean and Clayton, they're out in Arizona, obviously, in Glendale, and we're just right there in Goodyear. So get to see them at some point every year, usually during spring training, and then maybe run into them, just happen to be visiting the same affiliate during the year. Jason's out there as well with the Cubs. They're out in Mesa, so it's good to keep up. And then we'll get some texts going here and there, and there are some old stories that sometimes get rehashed, and we start going back and forth on that might be for another time, or sitting around at a bar having a couple drinks, rehashing some of those dumb stuff we did. But I think we were pretty innocent.
Well, let's wrap up with the 03 team, talking about your manager that year, Luis Rivera, captain's all-time managerial wins leader, and now the third base coach for the Blue Jays. What was it like playing for him? What did you learn from him?
Yeah, it was great playing for him. He had a great balance of, when to be serious and then when to cut up a little bit. I really learned a lot from him and watching him and his professionalism, how to go about the work on the field before the game, the preparation in the cage, and then going out and just playing the game that we love, and not letting it become something that over robotic or mechanical, that tends to happen when you're working in a cage day after day after day, and working on those fundamentals. It can sometimes just get a little stiff and a little robotic, and you gotta enter and then go back to that play, that just athleticism, and just have fun like you're out there, in the sandlot. And he had that, and his leadership really was a reason that kept us going. And it's fun to reconnect with him every once in a while and see what he's done in the big leagues. And then of course Wayne Kirby being the hitting coach, and he's spent a lot of times in Baltimore on their staff, and of course Tony Arnold, he's still coaching in our organization and such a valuable member.
All right, so Wally, it's 2012. You're an old man now. Now you're the manager of the Captains. Your second year as a manager in the organization. You had been with Mahoning Valley the year before, and you get handed this Captains Club that now, by 2020, holds the record for the most alumni to reach the majors with 10. You had Jose Ramirez, Elvis Araujo, Francisco Lindor, Cody Anderson, Sean Armstrong, Tyler Naquin, Sean Morimondo, Joe Wendell, Adam Plutko, and now, as of last year, Robel Garcia. I know, out of nowhere with the Cubs last year after
out of nowhere
the Italian League. So when did you have a sense that you had a group that had that much potential?
When we were in spring training, and a lot of the other staff likes to give me a hard time because it's hard to talk about any of the teams that I've managed and not start off with Lindor, and Frankie. And I cannot say enough about his ability, his leadership at 18 years old, his ability to unite a clubhouse, coming from Puerto Rico, so obviously being fluent in Spanish, spending a decent amount of time in the States. I think he moved over here when he's 13 years old. So, the language barrier was not something that was a problem for that team, or especially for him. And he would bring the two sides together, because sometimes it can get a little bit separated, not in a harsh way, just as a general interest and kill some time way. And but his stats, if you just look at his line, it's not the most impressive, it's not the most unbelievable thing. But when you went to a game that year, I guess any year for that matter, he was always the youngest player on the field, and he was always the best player on the field. You just knew it. It didn't matter what the numbers said. You just knew it. He played like it. And if you couldn't see it, then that was on you. But and then of course when we had Robel Garcia starting at second base, and he was a decent prospect for us, and it wasn't coming together for him that first half of the year. And so, through a lot of conversations, we thought what was best for Robel, and then also this kid that they had in extended spring training, Jose Ramirez, to flip those guys and see, if we could help Robel catch some of that, success that he'd had before. And I'll never forget talking to Teddy Kubiak, a former captain's manager, and he said, "Wally, I'm telling you right now, we're sending you the pennant right here." And he was exactly right. Once we put Jose in the lineup, him and Francisco up the middle was one of the most enjoyable half seasons of baseball it could ever be, because everyone's, a lot of people will say, "Oh, you did such a good job with that team or developing Francisco or Jose," and I just laugh, because the only thing I did was write their name in the lineup every day and then just get out of the way, let them play, and just enjoy it, because those two were special and obviously still are.
Yeah, and everybody in Cleveland now, of course, knows them as the left side of the infield, but they were the middle infield
Yeah.
tandem when you got
Yeah.
Jose from Mahoning Valley about mid-season. What was it like watching them up the middle? What was their chemistry like?
It was like they've been doing it their whole life. I mean, it really was. There were some plays that, I'd like to go back, and I don't specifically remember any of these, but, like one of them going up the middle and flipping it to the other one to throw to first, or just some of the acrobatic plays. And what was so great is their intention and their focus, with also, as I mentioned, that Louis was teaching us that play, that athleticism, that fun of the game. And when you can combine that with some, some pretty high level skills, it's just fun to watch.
Did you have individually with Lindor and Ramirez one element of each of their games that stood out to you in the moment that year?
That's a good question. What really stood out to me was usually you get, especially at that level, and younger players and ones that are as talented as them, you'll get some of the highlight reel top 10 plays. We also get some, goofy, just lack of attention to detail and just routine, mess up the routine. It's either one or the other. One, he's either really good at the routine and doesn't have the ability to make that spectacular play. And both of them, they were so consistent on the routine stuff. If it was hit on the ground, anywhere up the middle, and it didn't even have to be up the middle, those guys would go get it. And they just made some unbelievable plays, but also valued the routine play. And that makes a difference. And that's something that, when you see that in a kid that age, you've got something to work with.
I want to go back to Lindor's power because at that point it was lack thereof. We're talking now
Sure.
the anniversary this week of his first pro home run, and he only hit 6 that year with Lake County. He's now hit 130 in the big leagues. Did you have any idea watching him that year that he had that sort of power potential? How much has he changed as a hitter since then?
I had no idea. Yeah, I knew he would surprise some people. I know when a lot of scouts, or either outside of our organization or within our organization, we're always talking like, "Oh, so what do you think he'll be in the big leagues? What do you think he'll do in the big leagues numbers wise?" And I remember throwing out there, I think 15 to 20 is realistic for Francisco, and most people just thinking like, "You're crazy." And I thought that was an aggressive prediction. I certainly never saw 30 plus, I mean, just incredible. But if you really think about, he's 18 years old that year. I mean, he's not the biggest guy you've ever seen. And so there's so much development, physical development left. And you knew he was going to put in the time. He takes care of himself off the field, eats right, gets sleep, trains just just as hard as anybody, if not harder. And now when you see him, it's not the same as if you're looking at Giancarlo Stanton or Aaron Judge, but the kid is put together and he's strong and he's maintained his flexibility and his mobility, and you put all that together with a very sound fundamental swing from both sides of the plate. It's just it doesn't it shouldn't have been as surprising as maybe as we thought. And of course, there's a lot of theories out there as well of baseballs and that type of thing, and it being easier to hit a home run now. And whether that's true or not, I don't care. You hit 30 plus homers in the big leagues, like you're the man.
The other guy you mentioned up the middle for the Captains that year, we touched on Robel Garcia. What an interesting story. I'm curious your perspective on it. So he was with the Captains with you in 2012, briefly in 2013, and then released by the Indians. Fast forward a few years, he plays in the Italian League and then gets picked up by the Cubs, and he's in the big leagues last year. When you found out that he was making his big league debut, what were your initial impressions, and have you reached back out to him since then to just kind of to reconnect and see what's up?
First of all, didn't believe it. I remember when someone, I think it was, hey, check out, the Cubs were on and it was his debut. And until I saw him on TV, I didn't believe it. It's just such a cool story and a great example of timing and development. And that's what I love about player development, is that, you do everything you can to help a player, and you hope you're steering him in the right direction. And sometimes you are, and maybe sometimes you aren't, but sometimes it doesn't even really matter. It's the timing of that player, whether it's physical development, maybe mental development, maybe something outside of baseball that changes or helps better focus a player. And I have not connected with Robel. I've talked to some of the guys that I know in the Cubs organization, and of course read about his story and how just an interesting path. But a great example of never. It's not like you can't. You say, I never want to give up on a player, so we're never going to release a player. Those things happen, and that might be the best thing that happened to him. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. Sometimes it's a wake up call, and I know it certainly is not something that we wanted to do or enjoyed doing, but couldn't be more happy for him and more proud and impressed of what he's done, because I'm sure there were some low moments, and he thought it might have been over, or maybe he didn't and everyone else did. And super impressive. And that's an example I will use for a long time coming, of guys when they're down and think it's over.
Just about done here. I want to ask you about the pitching staff from that season.
Yeah. And I mean, a great pitching staff. I mean, to work with, I'd start with our pitching coach, Jeff Harris, who's one of my great friends, still is to this day. He was the right guy for that group. His relationship with Cody Anderson particularly stands out to me. I mean, those guys really connected in a way that was really neat, not in a way that they always got along or never disagreed, because there were. And that's what I appreciated about Cody, and Jeff appreciated, I guess Harry, appreciated about, guys like that is they weren't afraid to ask why. They trusted us. They trusted Harry and what he was telling them, but Harry always had a why behind what he was telling them to do. And that really helps the buy-in, whether they were making, mechanical adjustments or, game management type adjustments. And so it was a lot of fun to go out there and watch, Cody and some of those guys and bringing in some of the arms that we were able to bring in was was fun.
You have a fondest memory from 2012?
Let's see. There's a bunch of them, man. You know what? You know what I tend to remember more than anything, which is funny, and I don't know why it's this way, but it's like it's crazy stuff, crazy stories that happened on bus rides or, clubhouse stuff that happened after the game, more than just performances on the field, and I guess that's a tribute to them. We're just in this mindset of it's just what we do when we prepare and we go out and play, and then when the game's over, there is an element of looking back and learning from the game, but there's also an element of just relaxing and enjoying each other's company and messing around and joking around. And that team in particular, we just all clicked. We had such good group, good core group. I think position player wise, I think of Jordan Smith as well, the milkman, and some of those guys who, it's fun to see Jordan back there now last year. But, it was just fun. And we felt confident in whoever we brought in, whoever was starting that day, whoever we brought in out of the pen, just because we knew that they were in it for the right reasons. They had prepared and they were going to give us everything they had.
Last one for you, Wally. This is a tough one. You're part of that 2003 team as a player. You managed the 2012 team. If you had to stack them up against each other in a 5-game series, who you got?
I'm going 2003. Tom Wiedenbauer, our longtime field coordinator with the Indians, and now special assistant as well. I loved his answer to the question of how would you improve so-and-so team, fill in the blank. And the answer is always pitching. Like, get more pitching, get better pitching. Because I remember we had a good lineup that year. I mean, we had some bats in that lineup, but it was our pitching that carried us. There were a lot of fun, low scoring 3-2, 2-1, 3-1 games that we won that year. And with that staff, I'd put them up against anybody.
Well, I hear they had a pretty good guy managing that staff.
That guy calling pitches behind the plate. I mean, it was two great teams, two great seasons that are full of great memories. But that 2003 team.
Well, Wally, really appreciate you taking the time and reminiscing with us. Thanks so much for joining.
Had fun. Thanks, Andrew.